Hey there, everybody. Before we get into it, I just want to apologize. We meant to have this out like 6 weeks ago, but when we went to go edit it, some technology gremlins popped up, and in the moment with all the cases, we just did not have time to run those down and to sort those out so we could get this video out. We thought it would be more important for us to actually, do the real work first. But we've got it sorted out now, so the topics are still relevant. The commission hasn't made its decision yet, and I think some of the comment periods, the online comment periods at the commission on the commission's website haven't closed yet. So anyway, again, apologies for the delay, and hope you enjoy.
I'm not good now. I can see great.
Awesome, because these are very small numbers.
These are very small numbers. They look like big numbers when you talk about them, but they're very small in print.
They're very small, big, important numbers.
Exactly.
Cool. What's up, everybody? Corey Singletary here with the Citizens Utility Board with another episode of CUB Tracks, and along with me, as always,
Tom Content, Citizens Utility Board. Welcome back.
Yeah.
We're back.
We are, and it's a busy time of year, so if we disappear for lengths of time in terms of our presence in the public sphere, don't have no fear. We're still doing the work. In fact, that's why we disappeared for a bit. Yeah, why we disappear from time to time. So by the time this comes out, we will have just filed our testimony in the Madison Gas and Electric rate case, and we will be in the middle of preparing our testimony for Xcel Energy and Alliant Energy, which are coming after that. And so there's a bunch of deadlines, and so but there's some deadlines that the public might want to be aware of. But I don't know if you wanted to go. There were three big things you wanted to hit first. I think the one that it might be most interest to people is we had kind of left on a cliffhanger on fuel.
There is that.
So did you want to hit that?
Yeah.
Quick?
So we will be talking about those public comment opportunities coming up in the rate cases. So stay tuned for that.
So the 10th of August, I believe, is what it was, and we're still waiting for orders. But on the 10th of August, the commission met and decided the fuel reconciliation cases. These are like true-up cases, like we've talked about before, where if the utility goes over or under budget on its fuel costs by a certain amount, then there's either a credit or a surcharge that is collected from or given to customers depending on the direction of that.
Exactly.
As we've mentioned in previous episodes, 2022 was not a great year for fuel. Most of the utilities were over in some fashion, meaning that they under-collected as compared to their budget, and so customers need to kick in to kind of true that back up so that the utilities recover the cost of fuel, which is meant as a pass-through because in theory, the utilities have no control over the cost of, say, natural gas or coal and things like that. So the commission made its decisions, and we've got a bunch of numbers for folks. So maybe let's just go in our usual utility index number order. We'll start with MG&E. Again, like you mentioned, we're still waiting on final decisions, so the final numbers may be a little different from this. But based off of what was in the record and the commission's decision, we're looking at about a 1.5%, maybe a little bit more for residential customers, and a little bit more than that for small commercial. So around a 1.5%, little over 1.5% increase for MG&E customers, and a surcharge that kicks in starting this October, and then running for 12 months, so into next year. Alliant Energy, we talked a lot about Alliant.
That's the big one this year.
That was the big one this year. That under collection was so big that the utility came in the door and said, we want to spread this out over 27 months, which the commission agreed with. And so starting in October of this year, there'll be about a 3 to 4% increase in rates, depending on what you're comparing it to and exactly what's going on. And again, we're still waiting for final numbers. So somewhere in the 3 to 4% range starting in October. So that'll kind of pancake on top of a fuel surcharge that's already there for Alliant customers that I believe will run through the end of the year. And then starting in this will continue to run through the end of 2025.
Yep. All through all of next year and the year after.
Correct. So in future episodes, when we talk about, say, the Alliant rate case and the increases there, keep in mind that there's already kind of a 3 to 4% increase baked in for the next 2 years for Alliant Energy customers.
Separate from the general rate case.
Correct. So about 1.5% for MG&E, about 3 to 4% for Power and Light. We Energy is about 2%, a little over 2, call it 2 to 2.25. But that one's going to be kind of one and done. September 2023, bing, bam, boom, done. We're going to get that off the books. There'll be a surcharge for 1 month, and then it goes away. So the number's a little bit bigger than some of these others we're talking about, but it'll be the pain is short. And this is how it's sort of normally worked in the past.
That's more like a normal fuel surcharge where it just hits for a month or two.
Yeah. And then Wisconsin Public Service, folks up in the Green Bay-ish area, northeast part of the state, that'll be about 1%, a little under. The commission elected to stretch that one out over 3 months starting in October. But still, the pain should be short, and it'll also be very small. It's less than 1%, so depending on your usage from season to season, you may not even really notice it. But just so you're aware, there is a fuel surcharge that'll be coming on your bills starting for service billed in October through the end of the year. So that's kind of bringing the saga of the 2022 fuel reconciliations to a close. Anything stand out?
Well, obviously, Alliant was the thing we focused on the last time, and that was the big outlier this year. And it's a big increase. It was $117 million. It was a much bigger increase than the other utilities had. We raised issues about that concerning the challenges that they had with coal deliveries to the Columbia Power Plant, and the PS. And we thought that, our reading was that the Alliant had to demonstrate that all these costs were prudently expended costs, and the commission decided that it was hard to quantify kind of a penalty for not following the contract they had with the railroad, and so because it was hard to quantify, it became no penalty. So we didn't think that really sent the right signal, but we did try to mitigate the size of that increase or bring down the size of that increase.
Yeah, and the commission did make part of their decision. They went with a lower interest rate, which helps a little bit.
It does help. That does help. Shaves
up, I think, by my math, it was about like 0.5% in terms of the monthly bill impact, so a little bit. So that's that guy. And then maybe continuing with the rate theme and things being high. So we were talking, and we get some help with some of our analysis from time to time. And we had folks from Brubaker, which is a consulting firm. The last several years, they put together for us a bill comparison sort of summary for residential customers, looking at utilities around the Midwest.
Yes.
And where Wisconsin utilities land, and so we've got right in front of you. You got a kind of a ranking of the top 53 large utilities. 53
across 11 states. I had to count the states, number of states. So
yeah,
that's fine.
These are all the investor-owned utilities, so this doesn't count the municipals.
Correct.
Although in Wisconsin, generally the municipal utilities are kind of a little bit less expensive or middle of the pack in terms of cost.
Yeah, generally.
But you've got some. There's some Wisconsin utilities with some small numbers next to them.
The blue highlighter. I don't know. I could have gone with red, but the blue highlighter shows a lot of emphasis at the top of the page here. So, if you look at the top 20 utilities in the Midwest, 4 of the most expensive are from the Badger State. So we have MG&E at number 3, We Energy's at number 7, Xcel NSP at 13, and Alliant Wisconsin Power and Light is at 16. So of the big IOUs, Wisconsin Public Service is the one that's kind of on the only one on the bottom of the chart, below the chart. And the analysis also found, consistent with some other studies, that our rates, on average, if you average it all, are second highest in the Midwest, second only to Michigan. So it shows the perennial challenge of higher costs that are being experienced by residential customers. There are similar rankings for commercial and industrial customers, and those tend to show up in pretty much the same spots in terms of the rankings that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on here. So let's put a pin in this. Let's circle back to this here in a minute, because there was one other thing. We've got these fuel reconciliation rate increases coming. That's kind of piling on top of an already bad situation. But maybe switching gears to maybe something a little bit less dramatic and dire and dark and dim.
Yes.
We put out a publication, one of our regular publications recently.
Yes. So it just hit our mailboxes for CUB members in the last few days. It's our annual report for 2022. Which shows our focus on kind of the balancing the customer interests versus the shareholders, and trying to get our work to try to put the customers first, but also showcasing our regulatory team's work to put the customers first. And so it shows in there that we saved millions for customers last year. I have to actually go look in the exact number, but I think it was in the over 40 million last year, 40 million in 2023, and 40 million again for 2024 through the We Energies and WPS cases, and it showcases the work we're doing in this year's rate cases, and also it includes a request for nominations for volunteers to join the CUB Board of Directors. We're a statewide consumer advocate organization, and we're looking for volunteers from across Wisconsin, CUB members, to step up and consider a nomination. So there's details in there, and we'll have details on our CUB Prince blog about that as well.
Cool. Yeah, I actually saw, our family, we donate to CUB, which seems weird since I work here. So the money just kind of the money turns right back around.
We thank you for your membership.
But I did see Andrea reading through this the other day in the living room, and she in particular likes the thumbs up and the thumbs down sections. She feels that's really kind of very clear as to takeaways for people, because as we've talked about before, it can be very sort of nerdy and wonky, and it can be sometimes hard to tell. Should I be happy about this, or should I not be happy about
We try to put it in layman's terms as much as we can, and kind of giving our kind of the year in review as a recap in a thumbs up, thumbs down format seems to be working for folks.
So yeah,
good to hear.
So you mentioned some of the work we've been doing, and one of the themes that we've been sort of focusing on is the balance between the customer and the shareholder or the utility, depending on how you want to look at that. And circling back to that rate comparison with the utilities around the Midwest, I feel it's a little uncharitable to say thank you, Michigan, again. That's kind of been the case for a number of years, but it is sort of, I don't know, it's not a great story when the rates in Wisconsin are higher than most of our Midwest peers, including other similarly historically industrial based states, where our rates for residential customers, and also actually overall across the electric utility industry for the investor-owned utilities, is much higher than the other utilities. Exactly,
and it's a pattern that we're trying to break. We'd like to see broken at some point here. So this is that's our goal, is to not be ranked this high. Michigan is off the charts at over 15 cents a kilowatt hour, but we're north of 14, and that's with two of our five that are right around 15 or more. So 15 cents. So that's pretty darn expensive.
Yeah, and I was looking at this chart in terms of the individual investor-owned utilities in Wisconsin and where they kind of rank in the Midwest, and there's actually only about a 12-cent difference, or 12 12 hundredths of a cent per kilowatt hour difference on average between Xcel Energy and Alliant in Wisconsin. And given the fuel issue we just talked about and that adjustment, as well as the increase that they're asking for residential customers for 24 and 25, I'm pretty certain Power and Light's jumping up the list here a little bit.
The position they could swap spots, it looks like, or they could be moving right on into the top 10 depending on how it lands.
Yeah,
and what's going on in other states, of course.
I mean, that'll happen when you pile an 19% increase on residentials over the course of 2 years.
This is true.
And I mean, there's a lot of moving factors. This is not like necessarily, indicative of like rampant corporate greed or anything. A lot of the costs more recently, as we've talked about, are driven by this sort of clean energy transition, right? And that while certainly hold renewable energy and low carbon resources provide the promise or the hope of lower costs than the alternative, than the status quo going forward. It's not free. It's not free energy. Even though the sun shines and that's free energy, it's not free. And that's something we talk about regularly, that there is a cost to this transition.
Yeah, build it adds to costs, and we're in this build. The utilities are in this build cycle as they look to ramp away from coal, and so it's up to our regulators to make sure that they find ways to find turn over every opportunity for savings, whether that's saving on the coal plants when they were shut down or after they shut down, to other our focus on utility profit, to other issues as well.
Yeah, and I think it also sort of reinforces the need for a renewed or new focus on affordability by everyone, not just the regulator, but us, the utilities, all the stakeholders. Because if your utilities are all in the top 25% in terms of cost for the region, then we got to make certain that those folks who can least afford to have their power go out and are most at risk of having their service disconnected because they can't afford to pay, that we're doing what we can to make certain that everyone can benefit from this clean energy transition.
Exactly, and that's why the continued spotlight on energy burden is so important. And it also calls for, I mean, it's an old saw, but I think it's still valid that it calls for a renewed look at planning and how well are we planning for this transition as it's happening. Mm-hmm. And are we too focused on the supply side? Is there a way we can accommodate low cost energy efficiency as part of the planning with a better planning tool that maybe the legislature could offer up? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's we've talked about the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the IIJA, the IRA, the big federal clean energy infrastructure spending bills that went through in 2021 and 2022 that we're still kind of getting through how we implement all of those. I think those do provide, I think what people have characterized it as a once in a generation opportunity to make investments, energy investments for our future. And so it's really important that we as a state, both the utilities and individuals, sort of maximize the extent to which we're taking advantage of that. Some of that is directly targeted affordability, and some of it's areas where we're hopeful we'll be able to take advantage of the money, but maybe we might end up leaving several $1 million on the table if we can't change our laws around, like electric vehicles or something like that. And there's a lot of money that's flowing in every which way, and we just need to make certain to try to grab as much of it as we can.
Yes, and if you are interested in saving on your own energy bill, you can, through the IRA, you can take advantage of the tax credits already, because those are already in place, but the rebate programs are still being developed. So this is a good year to check out, see where you are as a homeowner, if you are a homeowner, to see where get that energy audit done and see what the opportunities are for saving energy at your house, what the opportunities there might be for solar if you can afford that. This is the year to do that so that you're ready to take advantage of both the tax credits and the rebates once those rebate programs roll out, which we think is going to be next year.
So I'm thinking on this comparison between our utilities and other states in the region, and not to put you in the hot seat like I usually do, but so one of the things that jumps out to me is...
I don't know the question that's coming, so this is always fun.
So it reminds me back when I used to work on commission staff, and there was a period where we were asked to provide some different color on why Wisconsin utilities fall where they fall in comparison to other utilities. And there was a narrative for a while that because of the reliability and supply crises, shortage that Wisconsin utilities were facing in the late 90s and the early aughts, that there was a huge boom in utility investment, a lot of investment in new generation, in investments to extend the life of existing coal plants and whatnot. And as a result, we had this big boom in spending, and that pushed our rates above everyone else, but that other utilities, other states were going to have to do the same thing eventually, and Wisconsin was just an early mover and everyone else would catch up. And I'm looking at this here again, and I'm struck with, is that maybe a similar hope that we can have? Because, certainly in comparison to other states, Wisconsin utilities or some of our Wisconsin utilities are moving much faster into, carbon-free resources than many utilities even around the country. Alliant Energy is a really good example where, they put in over a gigawatt of new solar by the end of, I believe, next year, and then they're also going to be shutting down virtually all of their coal by the end of 2026, unless plans change, but that's the plan right now. So within the span of
the next
3 years,
yep,
there will be no coal for Alliant and huge amounts of renewables and some clean natural gas. And maybe we're ahead, but maybe it's just more spend. So I don't know if you have a thought.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. When did it ever balance out, right? I mean, that we kept saying, well, other states are going to catch up. Other states are going to catch up. And we were either highest or second highest in the Midwest. Maybe our victory lap is that we went from number 1 to number 2 most expensive. I don't know. That's not a big victory lap. But you look at Iowa, where they've dramatically. I mean, on certain days when the wind is blowing, half their energy is coming from wind power, and that fuel cost is free, and their average cost is markedly lower as an average of their IOUs. It's dramatic. I mean, looking forward, there is pressure across all the utilities, every utility, even the decarbonization plans are in place, even in places like Indiana, and so there's investment that's going to be happening in renewables there too, but. Where do we end up? Do we end up at is number 3 most expensive going to be the victory lap, or are we ever going to be in the middle of the pack? When Tommy Thompson was governor, he was, as everybody knows, a great cheerleader for the state, and would basically go to Illinois and say, come to Wisconsin because of our cheap power, and we've been higher than Illinois for a while.
Yeah, and it's interesting you had mentioned Iowa. So Iowa has 2 big investor-owned utilities, Interstate Power and Light, which is an Alliant company,
right?
And Mid-American and Mid-Am. If I'm remembering the dynamic over there, Mid-Am is the big one.
Correct.
And Mid-American's average residential rate is like 11 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's a lot less expensive. Or even if you think about,
which is third cheapest it's in the bottom 10 for the whole Midwest.
Yeah. And you can maybe even folks would think about, well, what about a state like Minnesota with all the progressive policies, and they've had aggressive RPSs for years, and they're doing all this community solar and all this kind of stuff. Certainly, they must have more expensive electricity. And theirs is also, it's less expensive than Wisconsin, and arguably they have, at least over time, over a longer period of time, been perhaps a little bit, they've been farther ahead in non-emitting clean resources and that type of thing, and just in general kind of where their utility landscape is with the different types of programs, and the challenges that they're looking at are kind of the things that we're just starting to grapple with. And some of it's, interesting dynamics, right? Like the commission over there just approved a life extension for their Monticello nuclear plant as a cost-saving measure, as well as, I'm sure it weighed into I'm not on the Minnesota Commission, but I'm sure it also weighed in. One of the things that weighed into the decision was that is an existing large carbon-free resource. That at least for that utility, it made cost sense to continue to operate. That may not be the case in Wisconsin because of the ownership structure, but it's like there's some interesting things going on when you look across the borders, and it can be hard sometimes to be like, okay, well, where exactly did we go wrong? But I think that it's clear that where our rates are now are not where we want them to be, and so the question is, how do we unstick ourselves from this sticky situation?
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's where I think your point to spotlight affordability, spotlight any tools we can to save during in implementing the clean energy transition, and spotlight ways to empower efficiency along the way. Those are all critical, and when and the thing that this report is consistent with the federal data, which show that Wisconsin's average rates are second highest in the Midwest, and for residential customers are 13th highest in the country. So it's basically coastal states, Hawaii, and then Michigan and Wisconsin are the top 13.
Yeah, that's. Certainly we're not in the 30 cents per kilowatt hour range. So, there's at least that small saving grace. But, it's definitely a challenge. And that's why we're here. That's why we do what we do.
Yep.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to the commissioners recognizing affordability is an issue, and it is within their regulatory authority, within their power to do something about it. That this is not just that utility regulation is not meant to just be a turn the crank, Econ 101, machine. It's meant to bring in judgment and issues of fairness, and like we talked, so kind of started off this discussion with balancing the interests of customers, against the shareholders, and making certain there is that balance.
Right.
As we're looking at these types of things.
And as that federal data is actually going to be included in our forthcoming report, utility performance report that we're about to put out. So.
Yeah, so there'll be two reports we're working on. It'll probably always be two, just because we want to, in the future, try to have these things be as fresh as possible. But by the time you're listening to this, the plan is within about a week, we will have or actually, hopefully before you listen to this, because we would like to have it up before we file our MG&E testimony. But the plan is to have a utility performance report card, scorecard. Marketing is still out on what we're going to call this, but it's a sort of, the first one will be more looking at sort of traditional operational statistics, things like reliability, things like sort of overall cost, like some of these similar numbers that we've got here. And so we wanted to try to pull together these statistics in a way that is similar to what some of our peer CUB organizations have done. Illinois and Michigan do a similar sort of report card. Obviously, they focus on their utilities. But also the extra wrinkle that we're bringing to it is we also want to try to empower the utility regulatory community at large, and the way we're doing this is trying to leverage as much open, publicly available and open source information as possible, and we're even putting like our code out there, so if people want to replicate what we're doing or build off of it, it's all there. And so that'll be out in the next, like I said, hopefully by the time you're listening to this. And then it's an ongoing project, but we're going to be trying to put together or leverage the energy burden data that the utilities have been filing,
yeah.
The utilities have been filing, that they have had to file for the past couple of years, to do really a statewide look at affordability using that more granular census tract data that the utilities have. And the statewide report scorecard on that is going to probably take a little bit more time, but folks will probably get a little bit of a preview of some of that analysis in the rate cases. I suspect we might look to sort of incorporate some of that. I need to make some calls surrounding that, but at a minimum, be on the lookout down the road, probably sometime this fall, for sort of a bigger statewide look at utility energy burden across the state of Wisconsin.
Terrific. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, good times. Well, like we talked about rate cases, I hear the drum beat and it's coming for me. So
that's right.
If it's okay with you, I'm gonna go back and go write testimony.
Had to go do that. But make sure you're ready for those public comment opportunities, which are coming up.
Oh yeah,
coming up on the rate cases. So the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel actually had links from its story, and we have links from our active cases page to the public comment page on the PSC website. But the windows for public comments, if you want to file a written comment, are open for all 5 of the big IOU cases. And then we have hearings coming up starting with MG&E on September 6th. So it's on September 6th, the Wednesday at 1 and 6 p.m. over at the Public Service Commission office, Hill Farm State Office Building. That's when MG&E customers will have their opportunity and there will be a Zoom option for that as well. And there's details on our active cases page.
Yeah, all these have a Zoom option, but some of them have an in-person as well.
Exactly. And then for Xcel Energy and Northern States Power, it's going to be September 11th, Monday, September 11th, 1 and 6 p.m. That is Zoom only. That's a virtual only. And then for Alliant, Wisconsin Power and Light customers, your opportunity is Wednesday, September 13th at 1 and 6 p.m., again at the Public Service Commission or on Zoom. And then for Wisconsin Public Service, there will be a meeting at the Neville Public Museum, the same place they had the hearings last fall. And it's going to be Monday, September 25th at 2 and 6 p.m. And then the last one is of the big 5 is We Energies, and that was just scheduled the other day. So that's going to be Monday, October 9th at 2 and 6 p.m. at the Clinton Rose Senior Center on Martin Luther King Drive, 3045 North Martin Luther King Drive in Milwaukee. Again, if you want to, the quickest way to find these is head to the CUB.wi.org active cases page, which is available under the updates tab.
Yep. So yeah, definitely pull all those down. Public comments, the deadlines for those run a little bit farther into the future than these public hearings. So if you can show up for a public hearing if you'd like, or appear via Zoom, appear either way, in person or via Zoom, or you can file a comment online. It's an either or. It's not meant to, just keep to do both. So that also makes it easier on customers. So you just pick whichever one works best for you. Attend a meeting in person, attend a meeting via Zoom. Just go online and fill something out in a form and submit your comment that way. Doesn't matter. They all carry the same weight because they all get transcribed into a transcript.
So if you like the spoken word, you've got good options. If you like the written word, you've got options there too.
Perfect.
And most people generally like the written. That's what we've found in recent years.
Yeah. So we'll keep putting that out on our blog, on social media, on the show. We'll keep reminding folks until those deadlines come up.
Yep.
But until then, start thinking about whether or not there's something that you would like the commission to hear from you as a utility customer as they consider all of these rate adjustments.
Super. And check out, there's details, quick snapshot on each of the cases is on that active cases page, which we're excited to make sure that people take advantage of.
Yeah.
So now you can go back to work.
Now I can go back to work. All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, follow along, subscribe, subscribe, share, rate, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you all in the next one.
All right. Thanks, everyone.